I'm from La Villita, as my people like to call it, where kids go to jail before they get to college, or poor childhood is what we all acknowledge. When the murder happens, we know the silent process. No one knows who pop clips, they'd rather change the topic. The gun claps loud, like strongly smashing boulders. This is the part of town where God gives a cold shoulder. You feel it in the summer, the days are getting colder. It seems the cops harass you the more that you get older. Hell dominates the sky, now Satan's taking over, conquering the souls that were murdered on the corner, claiming them forever souls, cursing the block. Mothers lighting up the candles on the place they got shot. Little brothers filled with rage practice loading a Glock. It's the cycle of death, whether you like it or not.
For most of us, being aware of your territory, of the pavement that you stand on, is basic survival and a way of life. Although we have several street gangs, there's been tension for over 3 decades between the two factions that meet along 26th Street, the Latin Kings and the 2-6 Nations. This border that we come to know isn't like La Frontera that our parents or grandparents are familiar with. It's not a fence of steel, but an invisible line that still divides us. So I wanted to know, at what point in our life does the border go up in our minds?
I'm a hip-hop artist. I live on Pulaski and 24th. I've been there all my life.
I'm a Little Village Latin King. My set was 24th Street.
I'm Yesenia Roman. I lived in Villita pretty much until I was like 15. I work on 26th and Pulaski. I grew up on 30th and Millard.
My name is Rodolfo Carlos Sosa. I've been living in the west side of Little Village since 1977.
I'm David, Little Village, by K-Town.
In Oso's case, the first time he heard of the border, it was through his neighbor. Same thing with Yesenia.
I was probably like 8 years old. And there was this other kid who was like maybe a year or two older than me. He was gonna go to his con su mamá la segunda, and they came back because he was with his older brother. They were walking down 26, and they hit Pulaski or whatever. And these, like, I'm assuming they were older teenagers. That they checked his older brother, and they even checked him. He formed his hand sign of a Latin King crown or whatever. He was throwing it down or whatever. He's like, yeah, they were just throwing down the crown. And I was like, the crown? I had always seen the taggings, and I heard King, and I heard 2-6, so it was like the story being brought to life to me.
When I moved to Millard, it was pretty much like the other side. The first thing I remember that I got asked was like, oh, where did you used to live? I didn't know. I was little. I think at the time I might have been like 10 years old. But then my sister, who was older at the time, she said, oh, we used to live on Ridgeway. And then a couple of the kids who were playing basketball, they were like, well, what are you doing over here? You know, like, where are you coming over here for?
Rudy joined a party crew instead of a gang, but like everyone else, he encountered the border mentality early on.
I was young, probably like in 4th grade. I went to a party on the east side of Little Village with my cousins. We were just outside talking, and I just naturally crossed my arms, you know? And I just happened to look up, and some guy looked at me with such hate in his eyes, and he crossed the other way. He crossed right over left, representing his gang.
Demo's problems started just by wearing his school uniform.
Growing up on my block, since I lived on a big street, it was pretty hard for me to go to school. I went to school in Little Village Academy. I started walking from school with a gold shirt because Little Village Academy is gold and green, and we used to always get checked. We used to walk in a ball, like 5-6 of us, because we all of us that lived over there would walk together. So they would see all of us in gold, and then it would start, like, it would get hostile. It was to the point where we had to take off our gym uniform, literally, and put in your book bag and white shirt because it was really bad.
With a lot of confusion, David also learned of his boundaries after school.
I guess I must have worn something to the side, one of those overall things, flaps to the side, and when I was walking home, I got jumped because they said I was from the other side. They actually got mad because they thought I was a smartass. They asked me, where you from? And I said, Jalisco. And that's like, they oh, you know, smartass, and they started beating the shit out of me. But I really, really thought that's what they meant. After that, I just got jumped every single day for about a week.
Students make each other aware of their geography. At Gary, sitting right on the borderline, gang talk is ordinary.
When I moved to Gary, I think it just kind of like was really in your face. Like everybody had an older brother, an older sister who was in the gang, or everybody, even though they weren't in the gang, they knew what gang they were going for. There was a lot of fights when I was there, tons of fights, and mainly of them were from gangs. After school, well, let's go walk around. The girls, like, they would go walk around blocks. Like, if they knew a girl who was from, like, the other side, or they knew that she was dating somebody from the other side, like, of course it was a big deal. Like, of course you were gonna try to fight that girl. My friends who were involved more on the 2-6 side, like, they would wear their colors, the colors from that side. And I remember Timberlands had just started to come back, and they were a big deal, and I bought Timberlands, and I was wearing black and Timberlands, and they were like, well, why are you wearing those color combinations, And it's like, well, they're shoes. Like, a lot of people don't think about it like that. They're looking at what you're wearing. They're looking at what side earring you got, or what side hair your hair is going, what kind of clothes you're wearing. They see all of that.
Other than the writings on the wall, posting up and wearing the colors is the only way to visually see the gangline. Demo used to cross the border on a daily basis.
The 8th graders would tell us, hey, shorty, man, you about to pass Ridgeway. You shouldn't be wearing that color, or you shouldn't be, hey, watch your hat, or, hey, man, that's his 24th. You can't wear that Kobe jersey, or you can't wear that Jordan jersey 23rd because of the numbers. And it's kind of ironic how the best players have our street numbers, 23, 24, 25.
David was born here, but he spent a lot of time in Mexico. And like other young immigrants, to him, the gangline was a totally new thing. But the rules still applied.
I was like a little paisito kid. I didn't really understand what was going on. That's why I was so ignorant to the borderline. After getting beat up, like left and right, and getting humiliated in front of all the other kids. There were these guys that I ran into on the street that would hang out at my house with a corner, some older guys, and they would tell me, hey, why you always beat up? I was like, no, it's some guys from over there, from across the street over there. They say I'm a king, and I told them I was poor, and then they started beating my ass. Like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't understand. They just started laughing. They're like, no, man. They're like, they don't think you're a king. Or, join us, and we're pretty much the same gang, and they'll leave you alone. So they, abandoned the garage, they beat the shit out of me for 26 seconds. So the next day, I came out of the grammar school again. But this time, like I said, a bunch of, old suburbans. I just seen, a bunch of guys jumped out with bats and chains and all sorts of shit. And it was the guys that, that I had joined with. Like, who was it? Like, those guys. So a little rumble and basically a message saying, hey, this guy's one of us.
Also hadn't turned the king yet when he had his own encounter.
We decided to go bombing this Halloween, right? And we're hanging around, bombing or whatever. We passed Ridgeway, which we went too far. One of my boys, dumbass, he just yells, King, love. All of a sudden you hear a couple of whistles or whatever, and then you just hear the loud ass 2-6, because we just had eggs and they had pistols, right? So everybody starts running and they start blasting. And I'm running. I was so slow. Okay, they caught up to me, but they didn't recognize me. And before I knew it, I'm running right next to these motherfuckers as they're yelling out 2-6. They're dropping crowns, and we weren't kings yet, we were still shorties. They blasted about 3 times or whatever. And I'm running next to them shitting bricks. Not literally, but I was just scared. I was scared like you wouldn't believe. I went into the gangway. I found my own way back to the neighborhood. I realized that the line was real.
Yesenia made a decision not to engage in the gang culture, but she couldn't escape it.
Even when I had my boyfriend, he was a 2-6. I personally was kind of a nerd, so I didn't really like that part of him, But it was funny because he used to walk me home, and he used to walk me to 30th and Lawndale, and that was it. I would walk the rest by myself, but he's like, I'm gonna walk you to here, but you know what I mean, the rest is you. At the end of my 7th grade year, I had gotten into a huge argument with my best friend, and from there, she got a bunch of her friends, and then they would always call my house and threaten me to beat me up, or wait for me after school to fight with me and things like that. And I confided in my mom. I was like, I don't like this, and this is happening. So my mom was like, well, no, we're not gonna go through this. This isn't something that we have to go through. And that's when we moved.
Everyone has their own idea of the borderline. Both sides agree on the hot spots, the risky terrain, but the actual line is disputed by a couple of blocks. So what is the border right now? I show them the Chicago Police territorial map that marks a straight line up and down Hamlin.
See right here, that whole Hamlin thing, that right there, I think that was pretty, I don't know how they knew, because everybody thinks that Ridgeway, or some people said, no, Lawndale is. So it's this is pretty precise right here.
The line is, to me, no man's land where no one's safe to bust out. So the alley between Hamlin and Ridgeway.
Boundary is there, but it's kind of fuzzy. We don't know exactly if it's Millard or if it's Lawndale or if it's Ridgeway.
I would say the border is Ridgeway, but Avers and Hamlin can also be no man's land.
David will never forget this one time.
Somewhere by 31st and Avers, I actually ran in the corner. We were going on the block, and out of nowhere, I remember the purple Cadillac just blew up on us. I just seen 2 guns, 1 gun out of every window, and just fire. I remember getting hit right in the face. Right in the face. It came out the back of, like, the back of my upper neck on my right side, breaking my mandible, breaking my jaw. You know, I literally had my mandible in my hand, like it was hanging out. It split my tongue. It was like wiggling. I had a taste of nothing but blood and gunpowder. Because it was burning inside. It was like a firecracker blew up in my mouth. It was actually a 380. Well, as I'm arguing with him to give me a beer so I could wash that shit out of my mouth, I get shot again in the back of the head. They were still there. They were still around. We just didn't realize it. They actually skinned me right here. Look. Thank God that one didn't go through. Just kind of like, when I got a 90-degree angle, we were just able to rip a part of my skull off.
The community's relationship with the police is shaky. There is a general fear, distrust, and resentment in trying to cooperate with them.
You heard the word sweeps. You know that 5-0 was grabbing everybody that they found, and they weren't locking you up. You know, like arresting you for anything, but they were taking you in to, back then it was 23rd and Damon, to question you. But now what they would do is they would drive to the other side by the bunnies, by the 2-6, and they would usually drive just right barely into K-Town. And they would they would kick us out of the fucking ride. And sometimes they would beep their horn, or sometimes, a couple times they would put on a loudspeaker, like Latin King Nation, right here, Latin Kings right here, and they claim they're 2-6 killers and shit, and we weren't strapped or nothing, so we knew what time it was, And a couple times, we got it, Nos Salvamos, we got caught up by the 2-6, but they weren't strapped or whatever, so we would just end up throwing down. But it went both ways. The 2-6 would get dropped off right in our laps, fucking gift wrap by 5-0 and shit.
Even Rudy, who's made it his career to work with troubled youth, struggles with the cops.
In the beginning, the prayer vigils were, we had a lot of support. We had support from the police. But now the police will not support us. They call it loitering. A police officer pulled out his gun 3 feet away from me. They wanted us to disperse. And then the next story was that, okay, someone called us that you guys had a gun. So I kept telling them we were waiting for the parents, the family, and the priest from Good Shepherd to come. We already called the watch commander. He knows about it, but, they weren't hearing it. They wanted to round us up and arrest us. And if it weren't for my boss coming and looking all dappered up, telling that same cop exactly what I just told him, things could have got ugly, A big component of their job is the gang tactic unit, And so without gang violence, that unit would be disposable.
Making a commitment to either side means that your physical world gets smaller, because now your movement is defined by borders all around you.
Wherever you go, that's your hood. Like you're an island, and you represent the nation. What I didn't realize was that every time there was gonna be beef. Eventually, I figured, okay, downtown's off limits, the malls anywhere nearby are off limits, Great America's off limits. I felt, incarcerated in my role. No matter how much you love the hood, it's only so big, and there's only so many times you can cruise that motherfucker up and down before you've seen it all, done it all, and before every fucking corner starts becoming just a bad memory or something bad that happened, man.
I know people that haven't seen 5 blocks of their own neighborhood. I know some dude that's never seen the Arc. I know people that have never went to Petrovsky Park. Most of them don't realize it because they're around people that never seen it either. Or people that say, nah, fuck that. What you gonna go over there for? It's funny how there's 2 McDonald's and 2 BKs. There's a BK on Kensington 27, and BK up on the corner of my house. There's a McDonald's on Trip and 26, and McDonald's on Kensington 26. Do they know? There was 2 Lalos. Nah, somebody here knows. You know what I mean? Society knows. And I'm not trying to say they don't care, but at the end of the day, it's our problem.
Has the line ever changed?
Gangs weren't gangs. They were, they were clubs. They were back in the day was Central Park Boys, Ridgeway Boys, Hamlin Boys. It was just every block for themselves, their own sweaters, and we rolling with our own, protecting our own.
The neighborhoods used to be even way different. There used to be branches of Bunnies on the east side, and branches of Brothers on Neighbors on 25th. That's as far west as we've ever gone. The Bunnies were actually on Sawyer, even sometime in the early 80s.
We may be different tribes, but we all live in this reservation.
As it turns out, the border does change, not only from street to street, but in the way we perceive it. A decade or 2 ago, to gangbang was to literally stand on your block wearing your flag. Today, with more access to technology and other outlets, physical confrontation at the border is less frequent. Much of the border mentality is taken to the internet, and when both sides meet in person, the clash is immediate and aided by guns. Nonetheless, the borderline in Little Village, whether it's Hamlin or Ridgeway or something else, is upheld by all of us. It's like an open wound in our collective memory that we don't allow to heal. But it's time to heal. This was Jackie Serrato with Vocalo.